Greetings and blessings, whenever and wherever, my brothers and sisters in Christ, and fellow survivors of suicide, loss, and attempt. I am Brandy Johnson, ordained minister and fellow survivor of loss. As always, I want to start with thanking everybody who's tuning in because doing new things like this takes a lot of courage. But it means a lot to have your support, whether or not you're directly affected by suicide. Knowing that these efforts are supported by a caring community makes a huge difference in continuing the fight to break the stigma and to openly talk about suicide. So, guys, this is the first episode in the second season of the Just More Than Survivors of Suicide Kansas City podcast. And I always say this is a special episode, but every episode is special. However, we will be listening to a special story today, Sara's story, told from her fiancé, Scott. And I want to mention that Scott has a background in psychological studies, which I think helps when trying to cope with and understand grief after suicide loss. I won't take up too much time talking before we listen in, but I want to say that Sara has a family grieving, a mother, 2 children, and a husband-to-be that will never be now. And I want to thank Scott for sharing Sara's story, for being a voice and providing us with a point of view through a male voice in the community. Men's mental health matters, and I hope that this can help other men who may be struggling to know that it is okay to talk about it, whether you've lost a loved one or you are struggling yourself. And also, for all who are listening, we encourage you to talk about it, to let somebody know. And after Scott has had an opportunity to tell the story, we have some extra segments that we will share with you. The additional segments are part of a conversation held before Scott shared his story with me. And there are so many great points. I don't want to leave anything out. But without further ado, we will go ahead and listen in as Scott shares both Sara's story and his story. And also stick around afterwards. I will have another special announcement to share that you will not want to miss. All right, guys, today I have Scott with us, who is a survivor of a very recent loss of his fiancée, Sara. And Scott, we want to thank you for being with us today. We're looking forward to hear about Sara's story, your story, and your family's story now. So we're going to let you take the floor today and tell us about Sara and yourself and your family.
Okay. I guess I'll start early on. Sara she was born in Daytona Beach, Florida in 1986. Her family was from Massachusetts, and they had moved down to Florida, and her parents met in Florida, and there were 2 kids that came from that relationship, Sara and her sister. And from the stories that Sara's told me, she was a pretty happy kid. She loved to sing and dance, and she just she was a great personality and just a joy to be around. Her father was more strict. He was the disciplinarian, and he did spank. Sara said in her stories that sometimes she felt that maybe a little too much, but I ever find a kid that says that they were spanked easy. So, take that for what it is. But they stayed there until Sara was about 9, and then moved back to Massachusetts. Now, I'm from Cincinnati, and I was working for a company in Virginia building a Microsoft data farm, and I was planning to come back to Cincinnati. I was living in a hotel, being a full-time field technician for them. So that was coming to an end, and I was coming back to Cincinnati. So I joined a dating site. And we should have never met. Sarah and I should have never met because I was searching the Cincinnati area in about a 20-mile radius, and I found her profile. And she was just the most stunning thing I'd ever seen. Just way out of my league. I knew that for sure. And I decided something told me to reach out to her, and I did. She responded, and we started talking. And I asked her where she was from, and she said Springfield. Okay. Well, Springfield's just outside of Dayton. It's not too far. You know, if it's a good connection, I'll travel, sure. And she asked the strangest question. She said, Cincinnati. She said, that's in Ohio, right? And I thought, well, if you live in Springfield, you should really know where Cincinnati is. And then it kind of hit me from watching The Simpsons. There's a lot of Springfields in the United States. So I said, what Springfield do you live in? She said, Springfield, Massachusetts. Okay. How did we possibly get connected when I was searching a 20-mile radius of Cincinnati? We kept talking. We fell in love. And I asked her if she wanted to come down and visit me at the hotel. I had a suite that the company was paying for. And she said, yeah, she was going to come down for, I think it was 2 weeks. And I drove up and got her. She came down. She never left. We were instant connection. I mean, it was a whirlwind romance, but it was just true love. And she didn't have any children. I had two kids at the time, and I was taking care of them. I had a 9 and 11-year-old. So she was kind of put into a strange situation from the very beginning. It was kind of an instant mother. My children's mother wasn't in the picture at the time, and so she took on a lot of responsibility very quickly. And in the beginning, it was okay. As time went on and my kids got a little older, there started to be some issues and conflicts in our house. And as my daughter went into her teenage years, that divide deepened. Just I I I, I won't point a finger at anyone because I don't know that there was any fingers to point. Sarah, she had severe anxiety, and a lot of times she misread situations. She also had a little bit of paranoia, so she would regularly think people were talking about her or were out to get her, and it was a tough situation. And everything was great. We had Sarah and I had two little boys, and around 2019, Sarah and I started to have some issues, and they were just, I think, just all the resentment of the issues with the kids and then everything else had just built and built, and it really started to affect her and I's relationship. So in 2019, she no, she didn't drive. She never drove. She just, because of her anxiety, she wasn't comfortable driving. So she asked her mother to come get her from Massachusetts, and she took the boys and went back to Massachusetts. And she was gone maybe 30 days, and I got a call from her mom that said she made her first attempt at her life. And it just it it hit me like a ton of bricks. I didn't know what to think. I had never had any experience with suicide in my life. No one that I knew of. Uh, it was not something that came to us. And she was subsequently admitted into a mental health facility in Massachusetts. They diagnosed her with schizophrenia, and they started to treat her. She was only there for about 30 days and she was released. After she was released, I had gone up and gotten the boys, and I had them back in Cincinnati with me. and we started to talk again through Messenger, and we came to some agreement and understanding on some of the issues that were really causing her pain, and we thought we had everything figured out. So I went back up and I got her, and she came back home. And from that point on, everything was okay. I mean, it wasn't always perfect. We argued like couples do. And I guess for her, there were more issues than she was letting me know of, at least in her mind. And then in coming into the winter season last year of 23, she was really taken by seasonal affective disorder. She struggled. She was having a hard time. And around December, she had another breakdown. And when she had that breakdown, her body went into fight or flight mode, and it stayed. She could not get any relief from the fight or flight. She also started to have delusions. Her delusion was that she was going to go into what she called a locked in coma. She wouldn't be able to talk. She wouldn't be able to move. She didn't think that she would be able to communicate even with her eyes. She felt she would be awake and alert and be able to feel all pain, but no communication whatsoever. And her biggest fear was once she got into that state, they would have to do a feeding tube surgery on her, and she would feel all of the pain and not be able to, because she also thought because she had higher levels of cortisol in her system that the anesthesia would be ineffective. Now, we talked and we had conversations that we tried to discuss the idea of dangers versus fears. Dangers being real, fears being uh, imaginary. You know, if you walk out of your house and there's a bear on your front porch, that's a danger. If you're afraid to walk out of your house because you think there might be a bear, that's a fear. Fears cannot hurt you, dangers can. So we tried to have that discussion a lot, and I just wasn't able to reach her. So as she progressed into issues, I started to look, unbeknownst to her, for treatment options. In Cincinnati, we have a facility called the Lindner Center of Hope. And I reached out to the Lindner Center of Hope to find out. Now, I don't think they would have accepted our insurance. It might have been a moot point, but I just wanted to find out. I knew that if they're a facility, they have to have resources of where you might be able to go. Sarah was on Social Security because of her anxiety. And one time when I was looking up the information, Sarah came in and saw the facility on the screen, and she went hysterical. She did not want anything to do. The treatment facility that she went into in Massachusetts was a very, very terrifying experience for her. She refused to go back, and she convinced me that she was going to get through this. She just needed to be at home. She felt safe at home. She felt safe with me and our kids. If she went into the facility, it would trigger this locked in coma. So I trusted this woman more than any other human being in my life. I had no reason to think that she wasn't, I asked her numerous times, do you feel like hurting yourself? And she would say, no, not at all. She said in 2019, when I tried that, it was the biggest mistake I ever made, and I won't do anything like that again. So I trusted her. And, I, in hindsight, we had a lot of personal space for us. We respected each other's personal space. I didn't go into, and I wasn't the kind of guy that would go grab her phone and look into her phone. She never looked at my phone. We didn't search each other's, search history through Google or anything like that. Uh, I had no reason to think otherwise from her. Then her struggles got worse. She started to develop a lot of jitteriness, and because of the fight or flight, she couldn't hold still. She was constantly pacing. She had to be moving. If she was sitting still, she would rock back and forth. And, I think for me in hindsight, part of it was so scary for me what was going on. I think I kind of denied how serious the situation had gotten. I didn't know how to handle it. So, you know, just keep on keeping on. Everything seemed to be okay. Not great by any means, but okay. It was manageable. Then we were going to go visit her mother on, actually, we were going to leave on July 11th. We live in a house that is not on public water. We have a cistern in the back, and I have a pickup truck and I haul water in for our house. The last time I had hauled water, my truck overheated and I needed to work on it. We ran out of water on Wednesday night before the Thursday that we were going to leave. My 24-year-old son lives with us and he wasn't going with us. So I told Sarah, we can't leave him without water. I have to fix the truck. I asked her the morning of the 11th if she had contacted her mother to let her mother know we would be coming up. And she said she hadn't. And I said, you have to contact her because we can't drive 12 hours if she doesn't know we're coming. She called her. She called her right with me. I was in the garage and her mom had had surgery to a tooth removed, dental surgery, and she was not feeling great. So she said, can we hold off for a few days? And I thought, okay, that's a good solution because I can get the truck fixed. I can get more water and then we could go the next day, 2 days. This was again, July 11th. Sarah's birthday is August 14th. And I said, if we wait just a couple weeks, you'll be a lot closer to your birthday. And then you can spend your birthday with your mom. She was happy about it. She was okay. Everything seemed fine. So she got off the phone and we went to work on the truck. I pulled the water pump off. That's what was wrong with the truck. And I found a water pump a couple towns over at an AutoZone, and I needed to go get the water pump. I asked Sarah if she wanted to go with me. She didn't like to be alone much. And she had gotten really indecisive in the month just following up to that. You could never just get an easy yes or no out of her. So she struggled with that. I don't know if I should go or not. And I started to get frustrated. And I said, listen, I want you to go. Just tell me yes or no. I don't want to make you go if you don't want to go, but just tell me. I don't know. I don't know. And I said, well, please just pick one. Yes or no. She said yes. I said, perfect. Let's head out. As we were going out and as we were leaving, we had a little dog and the dog ran out. And I was frustrated again because I said, I just need to go get this. I need to get this water pump so I can get the truck fixed. And I had a sense of urgency because I know she really wanted to go see her mom. Now that was a self-imposed sense of urgency. She was not pressuring me, to get the truck fixed, but I had a sense of urgency. So she said, I'll just stay here and I'll chase the dog. Why don't you take the boys and run to the auto parts store? I said, well, I don't really want to take the boys because when they're together, any store you go to, it's a touch fest. They got to touch everything in the store. I love those boys to death, but when they're together, they're two Category 5 hurricanes. And she said, I just want some time to myself. Now, in the week before that, we had just been talking about having personal space, time to do our own things, something quiet, someplace where we can decompress a little bit. So I thought, okay, this is one of the things we talked about. And I said, okay, that's fine. I'll take the boys with me. We're only going to be gone 45 minutes to an hour. I think about an hour. And I went to the auto parts store, and on the way back, I have a Ring camera on my garage, and I was getting alerts that the dog was back, but she wasn't coming out to get the dog. And I started to get worried. I started to call her. I started to message her. She wasn't responding to me. Then I got really worried. I got a sickness in my stomach because I really felt like something bad had happened. So we came back to the house. I got, and when we were going inside, I told them, sit in the living room because I needed to find mommy. I needed to have a conversation with her privately. So I went into our bedroom. Uh, it's an older ranch house. We only have air conditioners in the bedroom windows. It was pretty warm that day. So I thought she could be in there. She wasn't in there. Now we had a business that we ran out of our garage, so that was the next logical place to look. And I went through our kitchen. We have a galley kitchen on the back of the house that opens up into a landing that goes into the basement, and then from there another door that goes into the garage. Won't go into specific details, but when I went into the landing, I immediately knew something was very, very wrong. And when I opened the garage door, I found her on the floor, leaning up against my desk, and she had taken her life. I called 911, and in the midst of the conversation, I don't remember much of the conversation. I know that they told me to breathe, and I told them I couldn't. Uh, they asked me to check on her again to find out if she was moving at all or if it looked like she had gone already. So I went back into the garage, and not even having the presence of mind of the boys at the time, I went in to check on her again, and you could tell that she had done this within minutes of us leaving, and she was gone, just gone. When I turned around, the boys were standing there. They had followed me, and unfortunately, they were able to see their mother. Now, I can't remember a single detail. I know I looked her in the face both times when I saw her, and I do not remember a single detail of what I saw. And I think that my mind had blocked out the trauma of what I saw. And I called 911, as I said, and they came out. The EMS, of course, there was nothing they could do, and that that was the end of Sarah's story to that point. And then it kind of switched into my story because then there were police everywhere at my house. And because of the method involved, there was a stronger police sense, I guess you would say. So then became the questioning. So I sat down. They asked me to sit down. I have some lawn chairs in the front. They asked me to sit down there. I was able to get a hold of my son, my 24-year-old, who lives with me, and he started home from work, and we were there for probably a couple hours in the front yard, and then they asked me to go to the police station with them. So I did, and I was there for probably 6 hours answering questions, telling the story of the day's events again and again and again. And you're dealing with the most traumatic experience of your life, but then you have to be questioned by the police. And I was a firefighter when I was younger. I am very pro police. uh, I understood why they had to ask the questions, but it did not make me feel any better to know that I was being interrogated for her death. And they were honest with me. They said I was a person of interest, and as a matter of fact, the case is still not closed because the coroner's final report has not come in. So as of today, I am still a person of interest. They apologized to me numerous times and said this is just the procedures. And I said I understood. I said, as a matter of fact, I want you to investigate this as vigorously as possible because her mother had questions. She asked me when I called her if I was tested for gunshot residue in my hands, and it hurt my feelings that she would ask that. But I also understood that she was a grieving mother who just got the worst news she could possibly get. But I told him I hope they did a complete, very thorough investigation because, once it was ruled, positively self-harm, then there could be no questions of my involvement. I mean, there was a Ring camera. Sara was at the car when I left. I was gone an hour. They spoke to the parts store. Of course, everything was corroborated. There's timestamps from the Ring camera when I got home, when I called 911, but it still hurts. It hurts a lot that, you're a person of interest. And the next few weeks were mostly tears. I mean, just tears. I couldn't do anything. I could barely exist. There was a local church that put us in a hotel for 3 days, and then my daughter paid for a fourth day for us to stay there. She and a few of her friends were going to come to the house to clean up the garage and the landing. They had experienced, one of her friends is a survivor. His father also took his life, and they were so gracious to come and fix the garage for me, but they weren't able to until the fourth day. So there was so many tears and so many questions that you can't get answers to. Why did this happen? Why were things so bad? Why this decision? You're never going to get answers to those. But we came back home, and the first night back was really difficult. Uh, my oldest son, he's 8. He went into hysterics when it was bedtime. He couldn't handle the situation. It was very terrifying for me. Uh, I had already been in touch with a group called Child Focus here in Cincinnati that is offers grief counseling in situations like this, and they'd already come out to the police station, and they sent the same person came out and came to our house and talked. By the time she got here, Tyler had calmed down, but it was a terrifying experience, and just all of the time since has been it's been really difficult to adjust. I mean, the range of emotions that you go through. This grief is a really strange thing. It's a really strange thing. You can be fine one minute and then really not fine the next minute. And grief is not linear. There's no linear line that's going to get you from the grief to acceptance of the grief. And it's really difficult because you don't know what's going to trigger it. You don't know, is it going to be a sight, a smell, a song? Anything can trigger it. Anything. And it's tough. I mean, there's no easy way. No one, I don't feel that anyone can fully understand what this is like unless they've experienced it. And man, I hope people don't have to experience it, but sadly they do every day. So many people experience this every day. And my main hope is that if I can share Sarah's story and my story, maybe we can help destigmatize these mental health issues that so many people are facing and just increase the awareness of the help that's available. I want to dedicate my life to advocacy now in Sarah's honor. I feel like if I can help reach people, preferably before, but survivors after, then maybe Sarah's death won't be a pointless death. Maybe we can add meaning to her death, and that would be a great thing. She in the months, or well, in the month following, I I was able to access some of her search history through Google. I found that as early as May, she was researching many different things, methods, options, um, almost a how-to. And if I known, I would have obviously taken different actions, but we can't know. We don't know, especially in a situation where you trust the person you're with. You have no reason to be suspicious. I mean, a lot of people could look at the situation or my story and say, "Well, gosh, you had to have seen signs." Now I see signs. I see signs everywhere. I see signs in statements that she made to me, questions that she asked me over the last months that had no meaning to me at all. No, they didn't raise any flags to me at the time because I had no reason to suspect this was going to be a thing. And in my search history, I I found things that made me question how strong our relationship really was. And those were hard. Those were hard to find and to deal with. And I feel like now I was angry at her for a long time. Weeks and weeks I was angry at her. I would go to the place that I found her in the garage and I would yell at her. I would yell at her all day long. And recently I'm just not angry with her anymore. I'm angry at her decision. I really wish she wouldn't have made this decision, but I understand the pain that she was in, and I understand her suffering. I do understand that in her mind, she felt this was the only answer. Um, I wish there was more I could have done, but I don't blame myself. I don't blame myself at all because as sad as it is, she made this decision. She made this decision without consultation. She didn't come to me and say, "Hey, what would you think if I did this?" That wasn't part of it at all. And I've part of a couple survivor groups through Facebook, and I've told my story there. I've shared a lot of details about the story, and I've gotten a lot of positive feedback for people, especially men, that don't feel comfortable talking out loud about these things, but read my story and say, "That's what I was thinking. That's what I was thinking, but I didn't want to say it out loud." And that's great. I've had a couple people reach out to me and said that they've experienced some dark times, and reading my story has helped them see some amount of light. So again, there's hope there. There's got to be a way. The system that we have is broken. Sarah was being treated by our family doctor back in March of this year. She was given antidepressants, and the antidepressants had no effect. Um, in my research since, I have determined uh, with my I'm not a psychologist, but with my limited experience, that she was suffering schizophrenia. She was diagnosed with schizophrenia in 2019 in the mental facility that she was in, but she was convinced that she didn't have it, that it was a misdiagnosis. And she explained why. And it all made sense to me. So we that was taken off the table. That was not something we thought was a thing. Now I'm 100% convinced it was a thing. Sarah didn't hear voices, but she had a lot of delusions. She had a lot of paranoia. And looking at the symptoms online, it was this box checks, this box checks, this box checks. Everything was a perfect fit. And she was suffering tremendously. And yeah, it's sad. She had very low self-esteem. She was one of the most amazingly beautiful women I've ever met in my life. She could have been a model. She thought she was an ugly duckling. She was bullied through school, and She never had an opinion of herself, never a good opinion of herself. No matter what I would try to tell her, no matter what I would try to how I would try to build her self-esteem, it never worked. She was just convinced. And
Most likely, do you think, that conviction came from her underlying mental health illness that
absolutely,
she was in
absolutely,
denial of?
yeah,
Yes. And you
yeah.
you
She
mentioned so many good things.
she just she even told me a story one time of high school bullies that came to her house to try to engage in physical conflict with her, and she ultimately dropped out of high school because of the bullying, and just all of that mental health issues
Yes.
just built up and built up over time. And you know she stopped she stopped trying. Even the doctor at the time, after about the fourth or fifth antidepressant, she would try to take them, and they would make her instantly suicidal. And the warnings all over them say, if you have an increase in suicidal thoughts, discontinue immediately. So we'd stop. And it was tough to get through those because even though the medications hadn't built up into her system, they still had to work their way out over the next day or two. And it was really tough. We would contact the doctor, and he almost seemed like he was annoyed. Oh, you're not even trying these. You have to take these for 6 to 8 weeks. And we're like, Doc, you don't understand. This is really bad. She won't make it 6 to 8 weeks if she continues to take this. So he eventually said, there's nothing else I can do for you. So I'm going to refer you to the psychiatric department of our business group, and they'll have to help you. So we contacted them, and they said that a psychiatrist was 6 to 9 months wait, 6 to 9 months from March, and she didn't make it.
I'm going to stop us here, guys. Sara did not make it. Those are powerful words from a grieving man. But she was struggling, and the system failed her. And I think this is all too familiar for many, but it has left Scott and their children and her mother with a very large empty space in their life. This is why we talk about things. One of the things that Scott revealed to me was that Sara didn't always feel comfortable talking to the therapists, even though she saw one for most of the duration of their relationship. As someone who has navigated the medical system as a caregiver for my elderly mother, I know just how hard the fight can be when we feel like the medical professionals are not connecting with us or actively listening to what we're trying to tell them. Sara also had fears about going into facilities, and it took options out of her family and her loved ones' hands. So I want to go ahead and finish sharing the remainder of the segments and these clips with you now so you can hear for yourself. And
She
just
saw
everything.
therapists. She saw therapists our whole relationship, and I mean, not in the last, probably not in the last year though, but she liked talking to them. But I don't feel like on the therapist side, she personally felt like she was getting a lot out of it. And then when you go to see a therapist, there has to be a connection, and I think she struggled with those connections. She didn't feel that they were right for her, so she was always trying to find a therapist to connect with. So
The
she
right
tried, but
one.
just
Yes. But as we talk about mental health first, we see internal beliefs that led to a cataclysmic moment when suicidal ideation became a life ending and a life altering tragedy. Scott and I spoke about first creating a safe space to speak, a space where one can open up and tell their story freely. But we have also remained respectful in talking about manner and method of Sara's death. As you have heard, and many already know, Sara died from a self inflicted gunshot wound. But gun deaths are one of the top methods of suicide, and in some cases, it is one of those hot topics, not just in our community, but politically. And we are not going fully into a political conversation, but I do want to include Scott's thoughts and points on gun control in relation to the suicide crisis. Before I play this, I also just want to mention, of course, we need gun safety, but we need mental health care, or gun safety and gun control would be pointless. We have to get to the root of what causes people to foster the idea of hurting themselves and even hurting others with any weapon, not just guns. But let's listen again to Scott, because he has many good points that need to be shared and heard. And we will also hear his final thoughts as we are hearing his side of the story, as he also tells us Sara's story.
I mean, I think gun control is a good topic, although in this country, if you were to be able to mandate the end of all firearm production today, you would never, ever get rid of the firearms in this country. There are hundreds of millions of firearms in this country. And so, when you consider that as a reality, to me, it becomes more of a mental health issue
Yes.
because there is a reality that I had that pistol for home defense. I had that to protect my family. I had no way of knowing it would destroy my family. But
Very true.
that pistol was in my possession for, well, ever since I met Sara. So we were together for 10 years. And in 10 years' time, the pistol itself never harmed a single individual in our home. It was only when a person that was struggling with severe mental health issues found it that it became a deadly item.
Yes, I
So,
think you and I are
you
on the
know,
same page because
I'm a Second Amendment guy.
yes,
I
yes,
think
yes.
I think that people should be able to have firearms. And, the thing is, I was asked, did you have a safe for it? I did not. I did have it in the garage. I did have it in a concealed. I didn't think anyone but me knew where it was. However, that was there for home defense. So had she asked where it was, I would have told her because I wanted her to have access to it in case I wasn't home.
Yes,
Not the way that she used it, but I wanted her to be able to defend our boys and herself at home.
yes.
So,
Well,
you
and
know, it,
it's one of those angles that some of the politicians use to fulfill their own agenda. But when we're
right,
talking about a legally owned firearm that was stored away from the main part of the domicile, or
right,
even if somebody has one of the I forget what they're called, the special gun locks. If there is a person who is wanting to use that as their method, unless you're physically there to remove it, then the potential of them going, hey, I'm going to search this out is way different than a criminal acquiring a gun with no serial numbers. So I think
right.
that they need to clarify, like you said,
Well,
mental health
and as I
differs
said,
from an
the thing is,
illegal firearm. Yes.
right. Well, even if I had a safe, I could have had it in a safe, and I could have had a lock on it, on the firearm itself. But again, she would have had the combination to the safe. She would have had the key to the lock
And you wouldn't
because
have
it was there.
expected, yes, you wouldn't
No,
have expected what happened. I will,
the days following this tragedy, I was able to access some of her search history, and she had been aggressively researching ways to die, uh, many, many different ways. So the firearm had very little to do with it. Her mother said just the other day, I wish you would have gotten rid of that gun. I do too, in hindsight, because, even though I am 100% convinced it was not my fault, nor was it the fault of having the pistol in the house, she would have found another way to do it.
Yes.
But, you know, her mind was made up,
You are
sadly.
correct. You are correct.
And
In those moments, it's about convenience more than anything. What can we get our hands on to cope?
in looking into things and trying to make sense of things after, Sarah was diagnosed with schizophrenia in 2019. When
Okay.
she made her first attempt, she she was admitted into a psychiatric facility, and they diagnosed her at that point. She didn't feel like she had that. She felt like they loaded some of the questions that they were asking her, and she just never agreed with the diagnosis. And she was able to convince me that it was not a good diagnosis. And in doing a deeper dive afterwards, I am completely convinced that she absolutely had schizophrenia. Um, all of the symptoms fit. She did not hear voices. However, she did have paranoid delusions, a lot of other of the issues. I mean, when I was looking at the symptoms, it was just check, 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 check. Now, again, hindsight's great, but had I known what I know now, I would have changed the way I handled things. There's a chance that she might still be here, but I also know that in a lot of these cases, if you stop someone from doing this, oftentimes you have just stopped that one time. They
Yes.
will learn, they will adapt, and they will better be prepared to avoid you and your suspicions next time.
Yes.
I am convinced that when a person makes their mind up and makes that decision, it is the hardest decision a person can make. They are at the end of their thinking on how they can change this situation. They do not see any help. They do not feel that they
Yes.
can be reached in any way, shape, or form. And once, a lot of times I've heard it again and again. Oh, this person, they took their life. They were a coward. They took the easy way out. And in a perverse way, they are the most courageous people you'll ever meet, because to do this to themselves takes the biggest amount of courage that you can ever come up with in your life, to take your own life.
Yes. And I
So
think
people
that's
don't
why there's so
understand that.
much. I'm sorry.
No,
Go
you're
ahead.
fine. You're fine. It's just it's people don't understand that. And a lot of the folks that you'll run into after all of this, they don't understand. They try, oh, you're one of the things that bothered me so much was, you're strong. You're so strong. You don't know how strong you are. You're doing great. No, I'm not strong. I am the opposite of strong. And there isn't this strength that I can pull from. Now, I learned to be strong. I learned every day to be a tiny bit stronger. I learned to take small steps forward. Some days I couldn't take a step forward, so I just sat down. I didn't go backwards. I sat in place.
Just
I kept the
resting.
ground. I kept the ground that I had gained. And you know, this is today is actually 8 weeks. So it was Thursday, July 11th, that she took her life. So it's man, it's a lot to take.
When
It's a
you're
lot to.
you're extremely fresh into this. I remember on day one and then day 30, and then hearing a couple other people, they're on year 10, year 20. And I'm like, I can't
that
even think
that
that
is one
far
of the
into the
things
future.
that's one of the things that has terrified me about this journey so far, is I have seen people in the groups talk about 10 years out, like you said, 11 years out, 20 years out, 30 years out, and they're still on my week one. And
Yes.
I can't allow myself to do that. I I want to be able to share my stories and my journey. I'm not a therapist at all. It's above my pay grade,
I
and
see
I'm
you
not going
say
to ever
that in
try to
the
be a therapist.
chat. I love your honesty.
I want to be able to share my first. I want to share Sarah's story, and then from that point, once we get to July 11th, then I want to share my story. So
Yes.
it's this, and the hope is that I'm a very, very open person. I am not afraid to share my thoughts and feelings more openly than probably a lot would, especially a Gen X guy like myself. You know,
That's a good point.
we were raised to suck it up, carry on, stop crying. It's not going to help anything. Get back to work, get your stuff done. But that doesn't quite help the situation. And, you know, that's dehumanizing in a way to tell someone you can't grieve, you can't show emotion, you can't. Yeah, you can. And it's okay.
I'll
It's
tell
really
him,
okay. I've not
yes,
met
that's
a
right.
man yet that hasn't cried at some point about something that may not be a visible thing. And, you know, that's where part of the problem comes in, though, is because so many are suffering in silence because they find that place away. Now, you know, there are times when I find a private place to do it just because
Yeah,
it troubles my children. They get worried that something is really wrong with me. I explain it to them. This is perfectly natural. This is perfectly normal. It's healthy. I'm sad, and something has, you know, elicited my sadness in the moment, but it's okay. Now, you know, again, a lot of times I choose to just go, you know, privately, or if they're asleep, you know,
yeah,
cry
to have
then.
that
Just
moment to
only
yourself.
only because I don't want them to worry about me. It's not at that point because I've cried many times in front of them. I think it's I think it's healthy for them to see it. I think, you know, as a role model for them, I need them to know that it is okay to show your emotions. It's, you know, it's it is the only way that you are going to recover from something like this in a healthy manner,
That is very
or
true.
as healthy as possible. I don't know that there is a way to completely recover from this, you know. You know, people in our situation have experienced things, and we have seen things that we're not meant to see, that we
Exactly.
can't you can't recover from it. You know, no matter what, from July 11th on, I will forever be a changed person. You know, I have said many times that, you know, my life ended with Sarah in the garage. And it did. It did because my life was built around Sarah. Everything that I had planned to do, all my dreams, all my aspirations, all my hope were built around her and her being part of that plan. So when she died, that life died as well. I have to rebuild a new life now. I have to rebuild a new life because, for one, I don't have a choice, and two, she wouldn't want me to just sit around. You know, I often say, you know, I'm stuck in the sand with my wheels spinning. I can't do that. I mean, I'm 50. I've got a little age on me, but I'm a young guy still, and I have an entire life to live, and I have two little boys to raise. So I can't sit still. I won't let myself. I'm not gonna, you know, I was mad at her for a long time. For a few weeks, I was very mad at her. I would go to the her where I found her in the garage, and I would yell at her, just yell at her a lot. And in the past week, just stopped being angry. I, I don't know how or why. I just stopped being angry. I am very angry at her decision still, but I'm not mad at her. And I understand why she did what she did, because in her mind, there were no options. There were none. So I'm not mad at her.
That's
Not
good. It
mad at her.
sounds like you've moved through some of the stages of grief, which anger is one of them. I think numbness, denial, they say acceptance, but a friend of mine, Sonia, who I met through Jay Lewis, she said, we have changed acceptance into the word surrender. We are
Mhm.
surrendering to the fact that we know what happened, and now we are, like you said, we're becoming new creations. We're different than what we were before. We cannot be exactly the same because
No,
of
you
what we've
can't.
been through, and everything's changing. And I think for many, if not all survivors, we acknowledge that we are changed. We are different than what we were before. I would like to share something inspired by Maya Angelou that says, I can be changed by what happens to me, but I refuse to be reduced by it. And that's in a little small flip book my adopted mother gave me years ago. One day I expected to pass down to my daughter and will now pass down to my sons, but in hearing Sarah's story and Scott's testimony, I can tell you this is probably not all of the story, and what I mean is that the story for Scott continues. For his sons, it continues. For Sarah's mother, that story continues. For Sarah's bonus children, that story continues. And as survivors, our story continues. But we will tell the stories of the ones that we have lost so that we do not lose any more. And I think the Lincoln Park says, so that another light doesn't go out. As the Papa Roach song says, we leave a light on for each other. And I don't really think there's more that I could say now that Scott has not already said. I want to thank you, Scott, for joining us, for being bold and brave, for being courageous and doing new things, and for sharing Sarah's story, for sharing her beauty with us, and for sharing your life with us. So thank you again, Scott, for the opportunity to serve you and to give you a platform to talk away the dark.
Brandy, I just wanted to take a moment to say thank you for allowing me a platform to tell this story. It's very important to me to share this story in hopes that I can help people understand that there are options and resources out there. And then on the flip side, maybe my story can help survivors grieve and manage this process as well. So I'm happy to come back anytime, and thank you so much for having me.
And thank you again, Scott. Thank you as well to those who are still listening. As mentioned in the beginning, we have a special announcement to share. September is coming up. It is Suicide Awareness and Prevention Month. September 8th to the 14th is Suicide Awareness Prevention Week. And I will have a totally separate announcement if you haven't already seen my Facebook posts for the month of September and an event during that week. But right now, the announcement is that we are accepting photo submissions any way you can get them to me for a special tribute and memorial video to remember the lives that we have lost and to honor survivors of attempt that are still with us. So if you have lost a loved one or you have survived an attempt and you would like to submit your photo, I'd say maybe before August 31st, as late as possibly Labor Day, no later than the 5th for sure of September. But the sooner the better, please do so. I want to start putting everything together as soon as possible because September is quickly approaching, and I really do look forward to having an opportunity to serve you, not only in remembering your loved one, but to serve you if you are a survivor and choosing to stay every single day. I have a sign-up sheet and I will include, it's a link to a sign-up sheet I will include in the description or comments. The way it works, when you sign up, I'll reach back out to you for the submission. If you're directly connected to me, on Facebook or one of the other social media platforms, you can throw it in a comment, send it to me in a message. In general, just get it to me any way you can, guys. One more announcement. I am releasing an updated list of over 600 names to begin a memorial page and continue to remember the loved ones that we have lost to suicide, but look forward to being reunited with in heaven. So that'll be posted to my personal Facebook page. If you also have a name, dates, a forever age, and you want that to also be included on the list, please feel free to send that to me. That list not only will be circulated on social media, but I will be utilizing that list when I am able to table or speak at other events so that others can see the impact, so that they will also be able to read those names, and so that our loved ones will be remembered. But of course, guys, I do hope as I close out today that you know just how much Jesus loves you. Jesus gives us a guarantee of salvation, and it's the greatest hope that we have. And he loves us so much that that gift is free. He paid the price for it himself. And for myself, personally, knowing that my daughter and my mother were both saved because of their faith, it is the hope that I cling to, the hope of being reunited with them in heaven. But I want to share this with you. I know it can help. So please reach out to me if you'd like to know about salvation, more about Jesus and how to be saved, how to have hope even after loss, and how to find our comfort and our peace even after tragedy, and how to live again knowing that Jesus is at our side. Well, guys, thank you so much, as always, for listening, for sharing this podcast, for supporting this podcast. And by doing so, I pray that you have also made a difference. I know that it makes a difference to me, and I hope it does to you as well. And I hope to continue making a difference in breaking the stigma that surrounds suicide by openly speaking and talking about it. If you have a story out there that you would like to share, please let me know. Please reach out, and we can schedule a time to talk. Additionally, if you are in crisis, please reach out to someone today. There is the 988 Crisis Lifeline. There is the National Suicide Hotline at 1-800-273-8255. There is 741-741 text to talk. And there is also the SAMHSA National Hotline at 1-800-662-HELP. That's HELP. On the old-fashioned rotary phone, you guys, it should be 6357. But the point is, if you are in crisis, don't hesitate. Let someone know. Let us be there to support you. But don't forget to reach out to us and let somebody know what's going on. Thank you very much again. I really appreciate every one of you from the bottom of my heart. Take care of yourselves. Don't forget to talk to someone if you're in crisis. And until next time, as always, guys, whenever, wherever, God bless.